Hey guys, Rezael, right back at it again with another Cardfight Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, necessarily. So if you're paying very close attention to the intro and the part that I chose to enunciate properly, I said right back at it again. So I'm recording this right after the last deck profile of regular Rezael, aka Faded Miracles, and this time we're covering Aggressive Rezael, True Miracles. Now, for those of you that have been paying attention to the channel, True Miracles is pretty much my take on Akina's deck that he used against Taizo, where, you know, he pretty much just goes all in on the rush, F heal triggers, FPGs, and this deck shouldn't work consistently. It wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to be a bit. Except for some reason, this deck refuses to lose when I try to get it to lose. What I mean by this is the game was more or less rigged against it, like a very defensive deck. And then what does Rezael do on first attack turn when I do my normal call 2 grade 1s to the front row play? Swing with Van, over trigger, give it to rear guard, swing with rear guard, crit trigger, crit to that rear guard, power to the one with 1 million, swing with that rear guard, crit trigger, all effects to that 1 million rear guard. It doesn't make sense. I flipped it over into 2 crits and it was rigged against it from the start, and yet it somehow won that game. It didn't deserve it, but you know what, it did. So let's go into the start, shall we, see what we got, because honestly this deck is fun to play, being all aggro, and I'm all about aggro, and having no PGs and heal triggers like a blessing to me. So let's get this started, shall we? First up, we have our energy generator, so ride deck crest. You want to ride deck crest in your ride deck. Auto and ride deck, when you ride, put the card to your crest zone. If you win second, energy charge 3, continues to up to 10 energies, and auto begin ride phase, energy charge 3, and then act once per turn, energy bot 7, draw card. You will never use the energy bot 7 draw skill in this deck. Unlike the regular version of Rezael, where you might come up with that, this deck heavily needs the energy for majority of its grade 2 cards, because this acts as deck stacking, which leads to more aggro / more defensive abilities when you have little to no defensive at all. No burst is definitely helpful to keep that up. Biscotti, again, low to no defensive abilities, kind of want to keep that up as much as possible. And Heavenly Bright, again, low to no defensive abilities, help keep it up as much as possible. All around, energy generators are very soft for that skill alone. If by some unfortunate miracle you do brick, you're going to use that skill to draw a card, but that's only if you brick and you are 100% confident you're not drawing any of them that turn, or getting them on rear guard in any way, shape, or form to use their skills. So, energy generator, nice ride deck crest. Then we have our starter, Rings of Aspiration. So upgrades to a boost, 5k shows, 6k base, auto road, motor point for second draw card, standard starter, none splash, a free draw if you go second. You can run any starter you want, but again, like the previous Rezael deck and all the other decks, it's the starters of the canonical starter of the main grade 3 and all that stuff. And so is the canonical starter of Rezael. Then in that case, we are running the starter again, though you can make it any starter you want because none of the ride deck requires it, but I'm going to run solo my ride deck as a one of. Then we move on to our triggers. Run our over trigger and light dragon DD of honors with Armor Noia. Grades to a boost, 50k shield, 5k power, over trigger in your deck. As a trigger with a card, draw a card, choose 1 minute. It gets plus 1 for the turn. If you vote it during your jet check, activate its additional effect, which you get until end of your turn. You also perform jet checks that balance your rear guard's attack. Yeah! For the record, me and Armor Noia are not on speaking terms, typically. Because typically, Armor Noia doesn't like to show up when I need it to, or, you know, it'll just constantly get soul charged. But this deck specifically, like True Miracles specifically, not Rezael in general, not anything from DZ, specifically True Miracles, this version, every single effing time I have needed Armor Noia, he has flipped over himself. Not to mention the fact that the time I just did my normal aggro rush, like I mentioned earlier, I just flipped them into double crits, which was not stacked at all. It just occurred on its own. I don't know why Armor Noia just chose now to start working. I think it's just this deck where, like, after all of the times I have attempted to pull Armor Noia and I gave up, and I just ran it in there just because I could, Armor Noia was like, you know what, F it, he deserves it, and then just started sacking itself left, right, and center. Damage trigger, overpower, on attack, bullshit, like, rear guard attacks that you constantly have 5 of, and then, or sorry, 4 rear guard attacks. Rear guard attacks that you constantly have 4 plus the Vanguard, and you get more jet attacks on top of it. Yeah, Armor Noia is nice. You can run Vulnerable for multi-attack for pressure or Asphoria, but I'm gonna tell you what, if I've learned anything over the past few days with Armor Noia is Armor Noia is the way. Armor Noia has listened to me for once, and I don't know if I should take that as a threat or if I should take it as a vote of confidence. He finally is on my side for once. Then move on to our normal triggers, except our trigger lineup is anything but normal. So run 3 front triggers in Night of Pressing Conal, grades of boost, 15k show, 5k power. This can be any front you want. I just choose Conal because, you know, it was from the DZ starter, or for the DZ demo deck, and the demo deck triggers are the canonical triggers outside of the effect ones for their respective faded ones. So, you know, because this was in that demo deck, Conal's in this deck. And then we run 4 more fronts and Bard of Heavenly Song Outpack. Grade boost 15k shield, 4k power, front triggers guard stroke, plus Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, she's with 5k shield. And a deck that doesn't have PGs, an extra shield is definitely really helpful. Also more numbers. Then we run 8 crits and 4 copies of Triumph. Grade boost 15k shield, 5k power. Again, it can be any crit you want, but canonical trigger because it is in the demo deck. And then 4 Blade for the Dragon. Grade boost 15k shield, 4k power. This deck does not have, actually it could have a soul problem if very certain things happen. So critical trigger, auto rear guard, then about a booster, put it to soul, choose over here, you can 2k for the turn. So worst case scenario, if you don't draw the soul charger, aka no burst over here, then technically speaking, what you do is use Blade Feather skill after you call it to rear guard, so the soul get 2k to something, and then you have soul for the next turn. But 8 crits that can be recycled via Rezael's divine skill over here, and then 7 fronts, because who doesn't like fronts? What's weird? I tried to actually no. Let me be more clear on this. Fronts and me have a horrible relationship. I just want to say this now, even though this deck is not related to this one at all. God Hand Dragon, from V, that deck that requires fronts. So I tried to build a God Hand Dragon deck once. Guess how many? I ran 8 fronts consistently, by the way, except for one time where my friend made me run 12. In the ones that I ran 8 fronts in, I never won, because I literally never drove check fronts except every 1 in 5 games, and I specifically had to see a front in there to win, and if I didn't, it was game. It could be any other trigger, but if I didn't see a front, it was game. So, that happened, and then in that one game where I played it, actually it wasn't just one game, it was 3 games where I played 12 fronts, and if you know God Hand, they have that one grade 1 that can stack a front to the top of the deck. Well, guess what? During those games, I only saw 1 front trigger per each of those games. Guess what that 1 front trigger was? Guess where it came from? Guess what card stacked it to the top? I just need to let this be clear. I do not have front trigger luck. Except for some reason in this deck, I sacked 3 on camera. I sacked 3 fronts back to back to back in the same triple drive. It doesn't make sense how luck is on my side on this one. Noia hates me. We've been through this the entirety of D, and yet the mofo wants to sack crits on crits for me. And then the rest of the deck, fronts galore. I don't get it. It happens. This deck is its own entity. Fuck it. 8 crits, 7 fronts, 1 over. We don't need defensives where we're going. Then we move on to our grade 1s. 2 copies of Heavenly Roar Rede. Weirdly enough, the deck that I put her in that was not meant to work with her at all worked really well. And then the deck I put her in specifically to work with her doesn't do that at all. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, act rear guard, soul blast 2 until end of turn. The power increase of your trigger units revealed by your drive check plus 5 in power. Typically, in this deck, her ability goes off the turn I don't see triggers. Except the last time I used this skill, which is when I saw those 3 fronts back to back. Meaning that turn, I got a free 45k to my front row. The bullshit I was trying to pull off with God Hand, I pulled off on pure accident with Rezael. I don't understand. And you know what's weird? Even though Reedy's at a 2-up, I still see both copies every single game. Most of the time, both of them hit rear guards, or at least they get into my hand, meaning they could have hit rear guard if I wanted them to. Amazing discard fodder if you needed to, because the deck could call from drop zone. Amazing Soul Blaster, who granted, yes, if you use her more than once, will lead into a soul problem, but, if you're going to sack triggers that turn, she is trigger galore buff over there. Good 2-up. She's early game pressure too, because anyone in their right mind is going to kill this early, because if they don't, I guarantee you she will kill you before you kill them if they don't over Soul Blast. 2-up. Then we have 2 copies of Aerial Sage, so Great 1 boost fact, showed AK base, continues rear guard during battle that he boosted something. If you have a Great 3 Greater Vanguard of Razo on his card name, plus 5,000 power, then auto rear guard, so you boost a Great 3 Greater Vanguard of Razo on his card name, ditch your hand card to countercharge 1, and he'll get another 2k for that battle. So 15k booster from Razo, 13k booster everything else. Like Reedy is a very nice early game call target, because if your opponent doesn't kill it, I promise you it will come back to bite them in the ass later. And, being able to get more CB is nice. This deck does not have a CB problem, but Aerial Sage being able to fix it is good. And if you want to try to do what I did with the original version deck before we got the release of Noberus, you can run over Reedy. You can actually run Wayward Therapy Angel, and Wayward Therapy Angel can call itself when it's discarded from Aerial Sage skill. The difficulty about that is Aerial Sage has to be in back row center. So while yes, you technically get a restand column via Rezael and Aerial Sage combined, you do need Aerial in the back center, which typically I don't do often because I aggro Aerial Sage act too early. So 2 of Aerial Sage, again, you can run Therapy over Reedy, but Reedy's nice for the turns where you casually sack 3 fronts, because why the hell not? Then we move on to 3 copies of Magic of Petrification for party. So I don't know necessarily if I need her anymore after everything that's occurred, but you know what? She's the nice way to keep Reedy in check. So Great on boost, 5k shield, aka base. Autumn, she's boost anything, sorry. If you have a grade 3 grade of Vanguard, you may soul charge 1. So you don't have to soul charge 1 if you don't want to, so if you're afraid of decking out, or you know the next card to trigger, you don't have to use Fupari. But it's a nice way to increase the souls, so therefore you can use your 2 main soul blasters, and your only 2 soul blasters, by the way, aka Noia and Reedy more. I mean, technically Rezael soul blast, but you know, you only use it once per game. So all-around Fupari is very nice, keeps your soul in check. Also, it's free and it's not mandatory, meaning if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But if you feel like you can and you want to set it up for an extra, you very much can. All-around Fupari is a very nice supporting grade 1 and is the only of the grade 1s that you do not call in the early game just to rush, unless, you know, you have an excess of them, then in that case, go all in, because over into double crits is apparently applicable in this deck. 3 of Fupari. If you can't tell, I am in shock that this deck works as luck consistently as is, because the 2 things that have been proven in life, in Vanguard, not to work with me, Armantino specifically in front, proceed to do a hard 180 when I play this deck. I don't get it. It's an anomaly to me. Whatever it is, this deck is a miracle and it lives up to its name. True miracles. Anyways, the next grade 1, 3 copies of Gargon. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, aka base, continues rear guard if it was placed by if your unit was placed by the ability of Vanguard Divine Skill this turn. Doesn't matter if the Divine Skill called or not. AK with Razo, you can just call it because Razo has Divine Skill. This unit will get all the rear guard and that booster, retire, counter charge 1, and it'll get plus 5,000 power as well. So, you know, 13k swing or a booster, which is nice for an aggro deck that can basically be a 5k poke to a Vanguard. And, you know, if you boost with it and you need more CB, well, retire it, counter charge 1, open up your board. Your opponent's playing a retired deck, they're not going to get as much benefit out of it not being on board. And if they're trying to bind it or get rid of it via other means, well, Gargon's going to draw on its own, and again, getting you more resources. All around a very solid grade 1 to have. Nice for early game rush. 3 of. 4 copies of our next grade 1, who I typically have problems calling because I don't like losing his 5k shield, because there are plenty of games where that shield makes a difference, especially in a deck that doesn't have PGs. And then in this version of the deck, Noia so much loves to pull it, so I don't have to worry about it at all, and that is a Gargon. AKA, if you can't tell, I'm extremely lucky with this deck, and I can't explain why. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Continues rear guard or guard circle. Opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater of Razion's card name. This unit gives 5,000 power and 5,000 shield. Acting on player's turns, you know, 13k booster and 10k shield, which is nice to have. Extra guard power, and guard power is appreciated when you're playing a deck that does not have PGs or heal triggers. And, well, that's why I typically keep Gargon in hand, and why half the time I do want to call it the rear guard, because 13k booster is a nice 13k booster to have on board. But then Noia, after I ask her to flip Gargon, will flip Gargon. So, there's that. 4 of Gargon. Good 13k booster on rear guard once you hit grade 3. Good 10k shield in hand once you hit grade 3. What's not to like about it? We move on to our last grade 1 in the deck. One of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, and that is a Patrol of Gust Venesta. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base, auto and Rotopon by Knight of Great Advance Ascennuar, call it to rear guard and soul charge 1, and then continues rear guard during turn. If your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater of Razion's card name, it'll get plus 10 power. All around pretty solid. When Rotopon by the grade 2, calls itself, soul charge 1, free 2k to itself. I'm going to tell you this right now, most of the time, you're probably going to have a full board the second you get to grade 2, and the only reason you won it is if because you only have triggers or your only other cards to call are all Gargons. If none of that is the case, then you're probably getting a full board on grade 2. 1 of Venesta in the ride deck calls itself, replaces itself with soul, and when you get to grade 3, hell, if you went first, you have a grade 1 rush target in case your hand is crap for calling rear guards, or you have a 10k booster forever for the rest of the game. So 1 of in the ride deck of Venesta, just good card to have. We move on to our grade 2s. 2 copies of our Blitz Order that has saved my ass both in this version of the deck against Blagdemire, which was a bit, and it worked somehow. And then, you know, a card that saved my ass in general, and that is Heavenly Bright. Grade 2 Blitz Order, play by Energy Blasting 2. So this is where your other main energy competitor comes from. Look at the top card of your deck, call it to guard circle, put it back to top. If you called a card, that called unit gets 10,000 shield for that battle. All pretty solid because it's a free guaranteed 10k shield at the very least, you know, being able to either call grade 3s or just anything else, making it at least a 15k shield if you call anything else. But also because you can stack the deck with it, meaning you can guarantee miracles for Rezael's skill, which all around is pretty solid. But again, it's just a free top card call, which can be very nice for guarding. And I remember in that Blagdemire game, if you guys saw the YouTube post that I made about it, I said I specifically had to see an Alpoc, and in my mind at the time, I had 2 Alpocs left. And while that was true, I forgot one of them I sent to bottom last turn via Noia, meaning I used that skill to fetch a Persona Ride instead, fully confident my deck would be able to guard through Blagdemire's Divine Skill while already at 3 damage. And I just wanted to be clear, again, no PGs, no heals, they swing. I take the Vanguard. I go to 5. They swing again. I specifically use the order skill to flip a card, knowing full damn well it has to be one of the 2 Alpacks left. Again, forgetting one of them's at the bottom. I flip the Alpack, I guard the turn, and then once I guard, I then remember the last one's at bottom, meaning I won a 1 in 24 odds, because that's how many cards left in the deck, counting that Alpack. I won a 1 in 24 odds of actually pulling the card I needed to stay alive with. It's bullshit. And then the following turn, I proceed to sack the over defensively when I needed to. Like, again, deck, I can't explain it. It just happens on its own. 2 Heavenly Bright, nice guard calling card, and worst case scenario, deck stacking for Rezael skill. 2 of. And then we have 4 copies of Divine Source Biscotti. You see, typically I haven't done a real story time in Vanguard in my deck profiles for a while because like some of these decks I can't really explain on. Yeah, this deck has history just from like the game itself combined with its own BS. Because I admit I get lucky a lot in games. This is different. Like, this is a lot more lucky. Like, a lot more lucky. Like, I could just walk into what's it called? A gas station, buy a lottery ticket, pick the most arbitrary numbers in the world, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it would pop up on the lottery. Like straight up, like, that amount of luck is what is occurring. Anyways, Biscotti, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when put on a guard circle from hand or guard from your hand while riding from the ride deck. Counter plus 1 energy, boss 3 to draw a card, so all pretty solid. You know, it's an either-or cost. You don't have to worry about too much. Sometimes we use CB for it because it doesn't really have a CB problem anymore, especially with our 5 counter chargers. Or you will use the Energy Blast in case you have extras because, you know, maybe you don't need to use Heavenly Bright that much. Because typically Heavenly Bright you only use once per game, but being able to increase your hand guard after you've been placed on guard circle to help, you know, increase more guard power or having a ride deck discard to replace itself is all pretty solid. And then auto when placed on rear guard circle persona roll this turn. Counter plus 1 energy box 3 the top 3 cards you to 1 card from one of them, put the top and put the rest on bottom. If it's not your battle phase, you may call a card instead of putting it to top. Well, get your rear guard so against board new deck, so there's that. Same cost as before, and not to mention the fact that they can stack deck for more triggers. Now, typically you have much better call targets in the form of Noia for numbers, Noburst for numbers, and other deck stacking purposes, Gigantic Smasher for numbers, and then like any other card in this deck pretty much for numbers outside of Fupari, Aerial Sage, and Reedy. However, you can use Biscotti if those other 2 are the only other targets because Biscotti can actually stack triggers. So all around, Biscotti is a very good grade 2, both offensively and defensively. Just offensively is not as good as our other options, but it is a good technical card to have, and it's a nice 4 of in this deck. And we have 4 copies of course, Navigant Taputi Noia. Now, if you saw the last deck profile on Rezael, I said Noia used to not like me very much because her skill was kind of 50-50 with the call, and the Soul Blast ended up leading me into a soul problem. Well, now the Soul Blast problem the Soul Blast skill doesn't lead me into a soul problem, and her skill, every single time I ask for a unit, she'll flip it. I can ask for Gargon, I'll get Gargon. One game I asked for Noburist, got Noburist. One game I asked for freaking Fupari, got Fupari. It happens on its own, and I cannot explain why. Anyways, Noia's skill. Autumn, she's placed on rear guard circle. If you have grade 3 grade Vanguard Rezael's card, and counter will the top 3 choose up to 1 grade 3 card from one of them, call to rear guard, put the rest on bottom. If it's your battle phase, reveal it and put it to your hand instead of calling it. Sadly, you can't get more multitask consistently with this by calling with Rezael and then using Noia's skill to call another rear guard. But hey, you know, it adds cards to hands. And with this deck specifically, you do have to be able to gauge and have full faith if your deck can survive the turn or not. Like I said, in that match against Blag, I already knew inherently I would have to flip the Alpack, and I also was confident enough the turn before, not knowing what was in my opponent's hand or what their damage was, but full enough confident to send an Alpack and a crit to the bottom of my deck, and instead add a Persona Ride, knowing that my deck will survive to the next turn, and be able to win because of the Persona Ride. Now, I didn't win because of the Persona Ride because they over-triggered, but I actually would have won if I didn't see the over-trigger on that turn. But, like, again, having full faith in my deck, and it paid out because I flipped and if I didn't add that Rezael, then, you know, I wouldn't have made the difference regardless. All around pretty good, though. Actually, it did make the difference because even with the over trigger, if I didn't Persona, I wouldn't have drawn. And because that following turn, when I almost died twice, I pulled a crit. Then I pulled the over while I was at 5 damage for both, meaning I was able to miracle sack my way out of death twice, and if it wasn't for that Persona Ride, I would not have drawn that card. And if it wasn't for, you know, Heavenly Bright the turn before, I would not have been closer to digging for those cards. So, you know, digging kind of happens on its own. Either way, free rear guard, call, and hand cards. And then auto when it attacks, you know, if your Vanguard's a grade 3 or grade with Rezael's card name, if it attacks a grade 3 or grade unit, Soul Boss 1 she'll get +1,000 power for the battle. Cool, 20k swing into any grade 3 unit. All around, pretty solid. This deck does not have a soul problem. If you run into soul problems because you're spamming Reedy 24/7 because you want to see more trigger skills, which is fair enough, just spam Fupari and you'll be fine. fine. All around, Noia is a very solid grade 2. I like her skill a lot. She gets me rear guards and or hand cards if you call her during battle phase. Not to mention the fact she's a 20k swinger. She's nice to have, so 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of Knight of Bowstreaks Noberus. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. All of them placed on rear guard circle by your grade 3 Gated Vanguard's ability, aka Raziel over here. You get to give him plus 10 for the turn. Cool. Free is 20k in my life. And then auto rear at the end of your battle they attacked. If you have a grade 3 Gated Vanguard Razion's card, and regardless of what grade the opponent's Vanguard's at, energy blast 3, shove to soul, draw a card, look top card, put it top or bottom. So we have a soul charger. We have another soul charger. We have draw that takes a little bit of energy. We have another draw that definitely takes up energy, but it also deck stacks for Raziel's skill as well. Cool. Replace itself, goes to soul. It only takes up energy. 20k swing if it gets called by Raziel, and it can deck stack for either miracles or drive check triggers. 4 of Noberus. Best part is, you can send it to soul, swing with Noia, soul blast it out, swing with Rezael, call it back, and then do it again. 4 of Noberus. Just good grade 2. Just a really good grade 2. Then we have our last grade 2 of the deck, one of in the right deck, and on the main deck of Knight of Great Advance Ascenior. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, auto and wrote upon by a grade 3 card of Rezael's card name. Choose up to 1 grade 2 less card from your drop zone. Call it to rear guard. Cool. Discard Noberus, call Noberus, discard Noia, call Noia because you wrote to Rezael. Use Noia's skill to be able to look the top 3, call rear guard. Discard Biscotti, call Biscotti. They're technically not going to get any benefit out of that, so giving extra rear guard. Discard any of your grade 1s, get them back to board for boosters. All around, Ascenior is a pretty solid grade 2. Literally turns your ride deck into basically a free rear guard. What's like about them? Easy one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. Again, typically you're going to have a full board by the time you get to grade 2, but you know what? If your board gets nuked a little bit, Ascenior pretty much just brings it right back. So one of him. And move on to our grade 3s. The rear guard is of a Gigantic Smasher. So I complained in the last deck profile that Gigantic Smasher doesn't like to show up. But you know what's funny? In True Miracles, like everything else, apparently logic is turned on its head, and Gigantic Smasher, Masher, while yes doesn't show up like every other game, he does show up every other game. He doesn't show up every game, but he shows up every other game, which is the important part, because unlike the other version of the deck, where, you know, the times that he does show up, I pretty much can't use him because I have to damage stall myself. That's not the case here, because the deck just knows when I need to guard, and it gives me the cards I need, like Arc does with 2 triggers for some reason, and then it proceeds to give me the rear guards I want. I don't understand it, and I just stopped questioning it at some point. If you can't tell, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it in this deck profile because I don't understand what's going on, and I'm the one playing the damn thing. Anyways, grade 3 10% 13k base, continues rear guard. If it was placed by your rear guard, it was placed on rear guard by the ability of Vanguard with Raziel on its card name. Oh, it's any user placed, so it doesn't have to even be himself. Oh, fuck, I've been misplaying this whole time. I thought it had to be specifically him. Oh, that makes this deck so much better. If something was placed by rear guard that turn, by ability, it gets plus 15,000 power. All around pretty solid. 28k. On Persona Right turns, 38k. Giant beat stick. Your opponent dies to this so easily because, you know, you have Masher going in, you have Noia going in, you have Noberus going in, all of them at least being 15k drops, probably 20ks in their respective rights. All around, Masher is a very solid grade 3 for beat sticks, and you stack any triggers on him, he's automatically broken. So you have Masher, good grade 3. What's like about him? Then we have last card in the deck, one of in the main deck, one of in the right deck, 3 of in the main deck of Fate One of Miracles, Rezael. You know what's also a miracle with Rezael? In the original, regular, Fated Miracle version, you know, the one with the heals and PGs, I did not draw my Persona rides consistently. Guess what happens in this version? Draw my Persona rides consistently. Just saying, this deck has its own logic of luck, and I have yet to understand it, but you know what? It's its own entity. So, grade 3, Twin Drive, Persona Ride, 13k base, Auto Vanguard, when it attacks into a Vanguard, counterbalance 1 to the 2 cards from your drop zone, different grades with a total equal grade of less than or equal to your amount of cards in your damage zone, call it the rear guard circle. So, pretty much if you have 5 cards in your damage zone, you can call Smasher, you can call Noia, you can call Noberus with that. You can't call Noia and Noberus because they're both grade 2s, but you can call like Noia and Gargon, for example. Like, as long as their grades are equal to or less than the total cards in your damage zone, you can call them, which is nice for multi-attack, and it only costs 1 CB to do this, or you can call them the same column, you know, just get a better beat stick out of it. And then Divine Skill, Act Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, return all criticals from your drop zone to the deck and shuffle it. That's why you guard in the early game with, you know, your excess of crits. Then you get them all right back. And then, you know, until end of the fight, you cannot ride units without Raziel in their card names. And then you get, when you damage check reveals a trigger unit other than a heal, if your damage has 5 or more cards, and choose a card from your damage zone to heal it, and then you lose this ability, you may activate Divine Skills a total of once per turn among all your cards. So, I mean, once per game among all your cards. So, all around, Pretty solid. Just one singular Soul Blast, return all crits back to deck, which you probably guard with early. Gain triple drive, and if you combine it with Reedy and you see, I don't know, maybe triple fronts like I did, then, you know, plus big numbers to front row, and Razo pretty much does his job. Typically, what happens though when I play this deck, like in this is the only logic that has stayed between this deck and the original, is that after the Divine Skill turn, I'm not going to Twin Drive triggers, and I will just Twin Drive no triggers. So, like, that's the only logic. That my next drive check will be vanillas, but that's it. Like, either way, though, free attacks, more bigger columns, good amount of triggers, sends crits back for just a singular Soul Blast that then combos really well into Reedy and pretty much the rest of the deck. Was not to like about a Rezael. Also, one more thing I forgot to cover in the other deck profile with this skill. If you're at 5 damage and you flip the over will automatically, thanks to Raziel's skill, heal you damage, so you go down to 4, and then the over itself will remove itself from the game, so you just healed from 6, technically, down to 4. Yeah, this deck is its own entity, and I understand none of it, but you know what? Fuck it. And without further ado, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it sounds like this deck is based off a total 100% off of luck and its win rate, and that is the case. But at the same time, you have to remember, that was the whole point of this deck. Literally, it was not supposed to work. This idea was conceived with the plan of it failing. What does the deck do? The exact opposite when I need it to fail. I don't get it. This deck has its own existence, and I don't understand any of it. But you know what? It does its own job. You call it luck if you want, because that is what it is. But when you are consistently, I don't know, sacking over into double crits or triple fronts on turns that you don't need to, but can just because, or literally every unit is giving you the card you need in the situation that you need it in, at that point, it seems like the deck is kind of doing its job. I'm confused too, and frankly, I stopped caring a while ago. So without further ado, I'm going to this one here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, look for switch. I'll see you on this one. Don't send up your Vanguards.